I wonder how Kamala's first ever contentious interview did.
May I please finish?
Yes, ma'am.
May I finish responding, please? But you have to let me finish,
You
please.
had the White House and the House and the Senate,
I'm
and they didn't bring up that
in the middle of responding to the point you're raising, and I'd like to finish.
Yes, ma'am.
Yep, it was just as bizarre, bewildering, and an absolute reckoning of the establishment policies as Fox News did a very big surprising job, as Donald Trump has his own surprising interview that he just did with Patrick Bet-David, as he just released a lot of significant bombshells. All of this as now there's a lip reader talking about the discussion that happened between Joe Biden and Barack Obama about Kamala Harris that really does highlight how she is in some significant political trouble. This as Brett Baier had some interesting things to say about this very important interview by describing her as being very testy. She was also late. He went on and talked about how she also, quote, was trying to ice the kicker, explaining a situation where she was trying to, of course, gain more time for herself in order to answer questions that were directly asked for her, while, of course, filibustering. All of this as Kamala Harris's staff members were desperately trying to end this disaster interview, as Brett Baier specifically described how 4 people were behind the scenes signaling them to end this disaster immediately and to, of course, throw in the towel. As it did look like Kamala Harris was having a meltdown, was about to cry in one particular moment, as a lot of people are asking the question today, if she can't answer any hard, legitimate questions, why is it important to vote for her? As she was asked that directly on BET and didn't even have an answer for that herself.
Let us know why it's so important to vote for you November 5th.
You know, there's a lot of misinformation out there that would suggest to people that their vote doesn't matter. And as far as I'm concerned, you should never let anybody silence you, because when you vote, you actually have the ability to determine the future of our country.
That's not an answer to the question, ma'am. Like, oh boy. And with all of its failures, it's important to note here, it's not just independent media and right-wing commentators that are saying that this was a disaster. The poll numbers, the predicted markets are absolutely highlighting how she is getting demolished. And we actually had very similar sentiments allegedly spoken by Joe Biden and Barack Obama as a lip reader moved forward and interpreted a talk that happened between these two Democratic powerhouses, as the conversation definitely looked very contentious and uncomfortable for the both of them, as a lip reader says that during this conversation, Biden came out and said, quote, "She's not as strong as me." Obama responded with, quote, "That's true." Yep. That's the commentary, allegedly, according to a professional lip reader hired by the Post, that came out and discerned from this particular conversation that definitely shows a lot of very powerful Democrats not feeling very confident or comfortable with what is going to be happening in America in the next 19 days, as we are very close towards the determining factor of the future of this country. And while one presidential hopeful is being obliterated by hard questions, another one is absolutely thriving when it comes to, of course, contentious interviews, being in places that, of course, people don't like him, where he still kind of asserts himself and still, of course, is able to get his point across. In many instances, in a very kind of humorous, funny way. And let's be honest here, the personality, the candor of Donald Trump is a lot more favorable than, of course, this.
Brett,
More than 70% of people tell the country is on the wrong track. They say the country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president. That is what they're saying, 79% of them. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam
You
Vice
and I
President.
both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that over the last decade,
But
people
you're the
have
lever
become.
of power.
But listen, Over the last decade, it is clear to me, and certainly the Republicans who are on stage with me.
Yeah, she goes on and never really directly answers that question, as for the first time in a long time, she had to face the music about her policy failures and her party that has absolutely been obliterating and destroying the middle and lower class of this country while doing the service of the military-industrial complex, the larger kind of intelligentsia deep state, and all these other big corporatist interests that have hijacked our government for their own personal well-being. This says Donald Trump now, according to the Daily Mail, just doubled down on attacking Kamala Harris on her race, as he came out and revealed why he thinks black men didn't like her in this very big interview by Patrick Bet-David that scored a one-on-one sit-down interview with Donald J. Trump, who had this to say about Kamala Harris and why her favorability amongst particularly black males is at an all-time low.
Really like me. And I think black women do too, but they have a woman who is black, although you would say she's Indian, but she is black. But she really, a lot of people didn't know, which is true. But
I learned about it just a couple months ago. You know, the fact
that she's black,
yeah.
Or that she's Indian.
The fact that she's black. I thought she was Indian until a couple months ago. Things change. I mean,
a lot of people. Well,
because as Kamala Harris's pitch to young black men is specifically that she once grew chili peppers. Yep, you heard that correctly. That's, of course, we have videos like this with her in Detroit saying this to predominantly black males.
So you may not know, but you will appreciate I'm the first vice president to grow chili peppers at the vice presidency.
Okay, come on, I like that.
Including Scotch bonnet peppers. You know about that one. Come on now.
Real heat, real spice. They don't know them
I mean,
on scale.
that's hotter, you know, that habanero Scotch bonnet. Every
Hottest
day
pepper
of
known
the
to
week.
man.
Exactly. I have no problem with it.
Learn something new every day.
Oh, yeah. Ooh, yeah. You grew chili peppers. That deserves my vote. You convinced me, Kamala. You know, if it wasn't for the economic hardship, for all the foreign wars, for all the international chaos, for the absolute destitute that most Americans are, of course, left to with your Bidenomics, Build Back Better globalist internationalist policies, it's the chili peppers that you grew. You got me, babes. I'm all in. I'm all in on the Kamala train, or the short bus, whatever you call it. Another interesting tidbit from the Patrick Bet-David Donald Trump sit-down was Donald Trump describing Obama as someone who is angry and, quote, nasty, as he recently came out and is trying to get black men to vote for Kamala and then kind of being angry at them for not listening to him. Now, I think foreign policy definitely took the forefront of this interview by Patrick Bet-David, which I thought was very important. As previously, a couple days ago, I was kind of raising the alarms of some very serious kind of concerns that Donald Trump was arising by saying a lot of kind of aggressive, very hyperbolic things about Iran. He then settled a lot of those claims by actually seeming more reasonable and less hawkish than even Patrick Bet-David himself, that called for more sanctions. Sanctions, a form of economic war. Sanctions that, of course, haven't worked in Cuba, haven't worked in Venezuela, haven't really worked in a lot of places, but somehow now Patrick Bet-David wants that to happen to Iran, while Trump responded with this, which I thought was very telling and something that has reassured me on my previous kind of criticisms of Trump.
Running around.
What's going to happen to Iran with you by the end of your administration?
I'm not asking. I would like to see Iran be very successful. The only thing is they can't have a nuclear weapon.
Are you okay with the same administration and way of governing stays, or would you like to see it go back to the 70s when Shah's was running it and Iran was one of the top 3 countries in tourism?
We can't get totally involved in all. You know, I mean, we can't run ourselves. Let's face it.
Sure.
Patrick, we can't run ourselves.
You put sanctions, they don't have, the people are going to turn and flip on them. It's not going to be a
tanks run.
As essentially Donald Trump made the argument for no regime change, which is something that if you look at our current foreign policy and our current events and the way that things are unfolding, there's a lot of people that would want that to happen. And it's important also to note here that this has been a larger want of the military-industrial complex and the Pentagon for many years now. Ever since the failed war in Iraq, the next sentiment was, of course, that we have to continue this larger kind of global war on terror and expand it to Iran. Luckily, that never happened. There was always voices within our establishment that have been pushing us closer to it. And it's good to see Donald Trump express sentiments highlighting how that will not be working with his administration, his own personal viewpoints as he expressed during this particular very interesting podcast episode. Another interesting tidbit was their kind of larger discussion about Benjamin Netanyahu, someone who has a very kind of contentious history with Donald J. Trump, as Trump came out and said that Bibi would listen to him as he is not listening to Joe Biden. Patrick Bet-David responded, do you think he will actually listen to you? Donald Trump responded with 100%, as the situation in the Middle East is definitely becoming uncomfortable for a lot of people in the region, as Israel launched new airstrikes in Beirut, despite the United States warning Israel over the scale of these larger kind of attacks that are happening with Iranian-backed Hezbollah members. The United States also just recently threatened an arms embargo against Israel if there is not humanitarian aid delivered to Gaza, as it looks like there is a larger kind of starvation campaign unfolding right there in the region that a lot of people are also warning about having significant ramifications on a lot of innocent people that have been caught up in the middle of a lot of this kind of geopolitical madness. Israel also announced that one of the Hamas leaders has been taken out in airstrikes, as the United States just used B-2 bombers and directly went after the Houthi rebels in Yemen, going after a lot of their missile capabilities, as it looks like the United States preemptively is trying to alter and stop any larger moves that could be made against Israel by multiple factions and multiple countries. All of this, as of course we have been predicting here, that there's going to be a big escalation in the Middle East. We told you that this was going to happen the last day of September. When we went into October, of course, we had this massive retaliation event. We were absolutely right about that, and we're predicting more, of course, tumultuous scenarios unfolding in that particular region. We're actually releasing a video later on today on LukeUnfiltered.com going into the deeper level of predictions that we have for the Middle East and the world, just for members of LukeUnfiltered.com, as of course we release special behind-the-scenes videos. I think we're going to have like 4 extra videos just this week, just for members, when it comes to, of course, talking about all the things that we cannot say here on YouTube. We also have a lot of master classes. You also get the ability to call into our show, and we desperately need your help and support after being viciously attacked by the federal government a couple of days ago. More on that soon. I'm just going to release everything soon and tell everyone exactly what's kind of going on here. It's not a comfortable situation, but let's just say we need your support more than ever. So sign up to LukeUnfiltered.com if you haven't yet. It's quick, it's easy, it's simple. Click the link down in the description below, and we, of course, are selling solutions and selling information that you guys could act on in order to, of course, better your life. Start that journey right now, and I will see you right there after this broadcast here on this particular YouTube channel. Now, continuing on with our conversation to what's happening in the Middle East that we've been able to, of course, successfully predict here. What's happening right now is the United States, along with Israel, are setting up themselves in a situation where they could, of course, overreact and therefore not have any kind of larger retaliation efforts against them. Now, the United States' involvement here is key, as in one way, the United States is telling Israel to stop. In another way, they are literally sending boots on the ground, as over 100 U.S. service members, as well as other advanced anti-missile systems, are now located inside of Israel, as it looks like the United States is now carrying out some of the bombing campaigns for the Israeli government through your tax dollars. Another major kind of contentious area is, of course, what's going on in Ukraine, where a very similar situation is unfolding. And Donald Trump actually came out and blamed Zelensky for the Russian invasion, saying that they should have never let that war start. If you remember, Kamala Harris was the person who, of course, flew to Ukraine, promised NATO membership, and left Ukraine, and then the invasion started shortly after that. As the United States just a couple hours ago announced that it will be sending another $425 million of weapons to Ukraine, as a lot of Americans are still reeling from massive hurricane damage and not getting that much support like the Israelis and, of course, the Ukrainians. As the Washington Post has a very interesting article here, an opinion piece that reads, World War III is already underway. Not that Harris or Trump has noticed. I think Trump has noticed, as Trump has been speaking out against the use of nuclear weapons, has been speaking out against these larger escalations, and has been promising specifically to say, if I am president, I will prevent World War III. Kamala Harris, especially during the presidential debate that happened on ABC News, was literally talking about, we have to win here. We have to continue the current course. We cannot give up here. As, of course, she wants to follow the trajectory that the Biden administration and her administration has been on, that has been leading us to these larger kind of chaotic geopolitical foreign policy moments that are insane. You look at what's happening right now in Korea, in Taiwan, in the Middle East, inside of Europe, and it's all storm clouds gathering. It's all just larger kind of for tat escalations, more and more saber rattling, more and more people posturing and preparing for an all-out inevitable war. We are, respectfully in a situation that I think a lot of people have seen themselves before these global conflicts kick off. And a lot of people do not understand just how quick, just how fast things could escalate as, again, the alliances are being made. The positions are being made. The troops are being prepared and put on the front lines. Countries are readying themselves for an all-out nuclear war. Russia is becoming the most nuclear war-prepared country in the world right now, as they are literally running simulations on how they would operate with 1/3 less of their population being alive. That's literally what's happening right now. As here in the United States, Kamala Harris wants to continue the way, and Donald Trump is promising a different way with less war, less conflict, and, of course, more importantly, warning about the dangers of nuclear weapons, which he also says he was working on ending, even existing in the world. So, yeah. I think the choice is clear, and whether you agree with Trump or don't agree with Trump, whether you even believe he's going to tell the truth or not, at least that rhetoric entering the human kind of consciousness, at least people even understanding the larger possibilities of peace here, of détente, of resolution, of being able to come to the negotiation table, at least those conversations and thoughts are out there and are being pushed through in the Overton window that the corporate media overwhelmingly wants shut. If you look at the corporate media, they are overwhelmingly cheerleaders for death merchants and warmongers. And that's exactly who they are. That's exactly what they represent. As that sentiment was kind of exemplified through this podcast, as someone wrote that the only crime Donald Trump committed was taking out the corporate media. And I would absolutely agree with their assessment. And that's probably why they're trying to take him out. As, of course, will they? Will they allow World War III to happen? Well, that's a question that a lot of people are asking themselves, and I think it's a question worth asking, especially with 19 days away from the future of the country being decided. What do you think is going to happen? Let me know down in the description below. And if you think this conversation deserves to be talked about with your friends and family members, share it with your friends and family members. It's one of the few ways that these videos actually get out there to the general public. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you guys doing that. And this is why I love you guys. Stay tuned for more. Subscribe to lookunfiltered.com, and I promise to work my butt off for you as much as I can. Stay tuned for more here on youtube.com/wearechange.